think back in the day we were kind of interested in gear a bit more than maybe we are now. I think we were perhaps more reliant on it then, but I think it just comes with being a better player and understanding your music more. That the gear becomes, in a way, less important. I mean, this is more for you.
Yeah, it's with me with gear. I was never a big gear guy. A lot of people I know know way more about amps and pedals and guitars than me. With my whole, if I'm gonna be honest, my whole take on that whole thing was always just like, just want to find what works for me and what's simplest for me, and then just stick with that. Not that we're not like experimenting or anything, but just also trying to keep it relatively consistent.
In terms of the recording, I think it's a lot of just layering. It's having a good guitar tone and then just multiplying it, making it dense. Because we don't tune like particularly low or anything, so I think to achieve the heaviness, it's just a lot of dense layering.
Most of our music is written on acoustic guitar first, because I've always been of the theory, like if a riff is a good riff, it'll be good by itself with nothing else. And then if you just add textures and effects and guitar tones and other instruments to it, it'll just enhance it. If you're relying on effects and tones to make a riff good in the first place, in my opinion, I don't think you have that good of a riff.
Just call it metal. At this point, I mean, there's so many different things being brought to the table and so many different influences that it just ends up being a mess. If someone asks me, what kind of band are you? I don't think I would say Black Gaze. It just sounds kind of silly to me.
Yeah, and the fact that it's a combination of two genres kind of limits what you're doing to two genres that we don't always stick inside.
Yeah.
So I understand where they're coming from, and I can see how people can make that connection, but personally, we don't consider ourselves to be that.
I mean, people will argue back and forth all day about what we sound like, so the broad blanket is the easiest route, I'd say.
In my experience, when you start a band because you think, oh, I really like these bands, I want to make my version of these bands. And so our early stuff is very clearly influenced by, like we always say, Cold World, Amateurs, Alcest, the French stuff, the German atmosphere, Lantlos, all that stuff. And it's us just wanting to do an American version of that.
Everything that is in Deafheaven pretty much started back when we were young, in terms of influence. And then I think it just took a while to understand how to use those things and put them together. And
yeah, as you progress, you get sort of, we were really into Slowdive and My Bloody Valentine and all that stuff at the beginning, and I still love those bands. But as you progress, you're like, well, I really like Mogwai too. I really like Blur too. I really like the Foo Fighters too. Like, what if we could put that stuff in there? And once you kind of realize that you can incorporate different types of experimental rock with different types of, like, maybe semi-experimental metal, it's like just kind of opens it up, and it doesn't just have to be black metal and shoegaze. It could be death metal and Britpop. Once you open that can, you can sort of put anything in those slots. In terms of like blending those two together, it's really just knowing how to, or figuring out how to transition and like write. It's like songwriting. You have to kind of find ways to take it down, or to like make some dramatic thing. You can't just stack it like one after another. It doesn't make any sense that way. So it's a lot of like process of figuring out how to do it right, or what's the best, most dramatic, coolest way to get from one genre to the other. That's probably the hardest part of the band, but as you go along, it kind of just comes natural, and you just start writing stuff that you just like. It was just slowly figuring out how to correctly put all of the types of music we like in one band without it sounding like ridiculous, I guess.